I can't hear my belly water. I can't feel my belly water. I can't hear my belly water. I can't feel my belly water. I'm back to my time on the cinema. 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 Itaina to go better. Itaina to go better. Fatuma Taikani Mini Tana, Fatuma Taikani Mini Alakalo, I couldn't care, Alakalo, I couldn't care, Alakalo, I couldn't care, Alakalo, I
Fatumata, Iyasa Koloya. Focus on Liberia. Focus on Liberia. This is Focus on Liberia, folks. Welcome to the broadcast. This edition is going to be very exciting. My guest today is Dr. Chris Nyan. That is Dougbeh Chris Nyan is my guest, an accomplished Liberian scientist, listening to the beautiful music from our home country, Liberia. I'm dancing to the beat. I don't know about you. Please help us by sharing the show for us. Share the show with your contacts. Dr. Chris Dougbeh Nyan is my guest here at Focus on Liberia. As you can see, I'm sharing the show. And as soon as I'm done, we will get to it. Focus on Liberia. Dr. Chris Dougbeh Nyan is our guest here in this edition of Focus on Liberia. Hit that share button. Let's get started here. Let's take a little piece of that music again, and then after that, we will get to it. And again, this is Focus on Liberia. My guest is Dr. Dougbeh Chris Nyan, an accomplished Liberian scientist. He is our guest, and we will be talking on a lot of things. And I can guarantee you, he's here to provide all the critical answers to the critical questions that I have for him. I'm dancing to the beat. When it is from Mama Liberia, it got to be good. What has happened to Musu, folks? Somebody tell me what she's saying there. All right, folks, welcome to Focus on Liberia. I'm Anthony here, hosting in this edition of Focus on Liberia. Welcome to our broadcast. As I tried to tell you earlier, our guest today is Liberian accomplished scientist, Dr. Dougbeh Nyan is our guest, and we are here having a kind of multiple issue interview with him. He has accepted our invitation, and we are glad to have him. In no time, let me welcome my guest in this exciting edition. Hey, folks, before I can introduce him, let me show you all the things that we will be talking about. I want to know, this is my curiosity, becoming a scientist and being a scientist, the challenges and the expectation. I am curious. I want to know that because growing up, when we hear scientists, something is going on through our minds. He will shed some light there. Also, he is a progressive from where we got her. So I want to know the progressive and the Liberia that they wanted. Do we have that Liberia right now? He's here and he's going to tell me. And then the juicy part, the politics, the issue with the political parties, the governance, and the road to 2023. And really, we see some hopefuls are lining up. Dr. Nyan is here. And so at this time, let me welcome my guest, Dr. Dougbeh Nyan. Dad, as we will always say, welcome.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
All right, I'm happy and very, very excited to have you. Let me say a little about you. Folks, Dr. Dougbeh Nyan is a Liberian scientist. He's a biomedical scientist with expertise in infectious disease. He is an inventor. He is an activist. He is the winner of the 2017 African Innovation Prize for Social Impact Award. He has served in so many capacities as a scientist, research scientist at FDA. He also served as a scientist at the Navy Medical Research Center. That happens in 2009 and 2011, 2 years around that time. He also served as associate scientist for BioReliance from September 2008 to 2009. For 1 year, he was there. He also served as associate research scientist at the Morgan State University, 2007 to 2008. He is also a research fellow at the University of Pennsylvania School of Medicine. He has done a lot of volunteer work. A little, he served as the director of the Secretariat for Diaspora Task Force on the Ebola crisis. When he was doing that work, he testified also right up before the U.S. House Committee on Foreign Affairs, Subcommittee on Africa and Global Health, that happens in September 17, 2014, on the Ebola crisis that was reaching hell in the West African region. He advocated for a sustained and coordinated international support for Ebola-affected countries in West Africa, conducted public health awareness campaign in Ebola-affected region. He recommended and advocated for the creation of Center for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, in Africa and the sub-region. He coordinated diaspora medical relief supplies and distribution to Ebola-affected regions of Guinea, Liberia, and Sierra Leone. He recruited diaspora medical professionals for development in Ebola-affected West African sub-region. He has been a busy man. Again, just a little about all of the things that Dougbeh Nyan has done in his work. in the world, I can say. Again, Dr. Nyan, sorry to bore you with that long introduction. Welcome.
Thank you very much. That was
All
quite a
right.
summary.
Yeah. So that, I mean, I just read a little about you, the little we're able to gather about your work. Anything that we left out, anything that we did not say right that you wish to correct for the records?
I think all is in place
Okay.
with an addition of my recent uh, visit to the country in the sub-region on the current COVID-19 pandemic awareness, and particularly focusing on vaccinations. That took us to a conference in Accra, and then I went into the country in Liberia and carried out numerous awareness exercises regarding the vaccination. So probably you want to touch on those later on. But pretty much that's where we are now. I also volunteer with I'm a member of the Maryland Medical Reserve Corps in the United States, and also carry out duties in parts of Africa, particularly East Africa as well. So I think that's the minor addition that I could add.
All right, I appreciate that, and we are not ashamed to take correction because that's what any wise person would do. So I appreciate that, providing the additional information so that we can know a little about you. Now, you want us to talk about COVID, so let's start about that because it's a major thing here before we get to all the political stuff that I like. So, do you care to share with us the updates globally on the COVID-19? Where are we? Where the trend leading right now? And should people feel a sense that we will be out of the woods soon, and why?
I can say we can be optimistic.
Okay.
Being out of the woods soon, I will not say in definitive terms.
Okay.
Because there is still quite a lot to do. The world has experienced millions and millions of deaths, millions and millions of infections, and it has affected various regions with different intensity and different gravity. Where we are now at the moment is the vaccination of the world. And in various countries, in various regions and various jurisdictions, the vaccination campaigns going on. We are of the opinion and of the scientific view that once we can reach a global vaccination percentage of about 75 to 85%, which we also want in the individual countries, we would have reached what we call this herd immunity, meaning a lot of people will have been vaccinated, and that will create a ring of protection. And so that's where we are. The hesitancy surrounding the vaccines, the speed with which the vaccines were produced, and the science behind the vaccines, particularly the newer science, meaning the messenger RNA technology that has been used, particularly by Pfizer and by Moderna. And all of these we have to clarify, not only to the ordinary citizens, but also to medical professionals who are not acquainted with the science and the technology. So we are encouraging the global citizenry to take the vaccine because we have gone through that. We know the vaccines are safe and they are effective against COVID-19, and they are free. Just as we have had numerous other vaccines in our past, in the past, like polio vaccines or hepatitis B, mumps, rubella, measles, etc. It's the same way we are asking people to take these vaccines so that we are protected from this scourge of the COVID-19 infection. That's the current trend globally.
Thank you so very much. I appreciate that. Now let's come to the issue of you being a scientist, becoming a scientist, being a scientist, the challenges and expectation. I have a few questions there. So for the ordinary person listening, who is a scientist and what all it takes to become one?
We have multiple areas of science in our lifetime.
Okay.
Even in the liberal arts, you have scientists as well. You have political scientists.
Okay.
And in the natural biomedical area, there you have the natural scientist or biomedical scientist. And so we have to give a distinction between those two.
Certainly.
In my area, where I believe you're trying to focus as to what does it really take to become a scientist in medicine and technology, etc. In our schools, in every school system, you have the various natural science subjects: biology, chemistry, physics, and you go through that. You go to the university. You major in any of those natural sciences, depending on the curriculum of the university. You graduate, and then you do a master's, and you concentrate and begin to involve yourself in various aspects of research at the university level, at the federal or regional level, depending on how the country is set up. For my part, I went to medical school, having left the University of Liberia under very difficult political circumstances in the 80s, exiled, and then I was in Germany. Went to medical school at the University of Berlin. So having graduated, practiced for a while, I went to the US, where I was recruited to be trained as a bench investigative scientist, meaning not just treating the patients, diagnosing and treating the patients, but looking at the diseases, what we call at the molecular level, at a very minute level.
Okay.
What causes these diseases? How do these diseases come about? How do we find treatment to those? So you have to do a lot of observation, a lot of experiments, a lot of testing. And so those are things that I was trained in at the National Institute of Health in Bethesda, and got further training at the University of Pennsylvania School of Medicine in Pennsylvania, in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And then, of course, as you've given my background, I went through various institutions and carry out research depending on my area of focus, which was now infectious diseases, and looking at various means of how, but for my particular purpose, how to detect infectious diseases in a very simple and very fast, rapid form. So in short, this is what it takes, or these are the steps that it takes to become a scientist in the natural sciences.
Wow, that is detailed, and I can imagine. So it depends on one to say, okay, it can take you X amount of years.
Yes. Again, like I said, depending on the academic curriculum and academic setup of particular countries, definitely you have to go through 4 years of college.
Okay.
Right. And then you have to do your master's, and some go up to the PhD levels. So you have different levels. And then you have different other aspects of science. There are those who are specialized in infectious diseases, pathogenesis, meaning how the disease come about and all of that. Those who are focused on diagnostics, like myself, I'm focused on diagnostics, the pathogenesis, how it comes about, and the immunity that may arise from the disease infection. There are those who are focused on various aspects of diseases, focused on cancer, various aspects of cancer. For example, there are those who are focused on diabetes. There are those who are focused on heart diseases, kidney diseases, etc., etc. Then you have scientists who are also technologists who are focused on going to the moon, for example. You know, what happened? How did this Earth come about? How was the universe formed? So those are astronomers who studied that. And you see those astronauts going to the moon every time from the US, from Russia, and from Europe. You have scientists who are in the area of technology. All of the gadgets that we use, the cars and all of that. Those are all scientific innovations and inventions that come into the production of these things. So science is a really wide area. Of course, then you go to the side of the political scientists too.
Thank you so very much. And we'll talk on that, because I see that you also have that cap and that affects you. So we'll come to that. So my next question is, you being a scientist and also being involved with politics, and I don't want to hesitate to call you a politician as well. How do you balance the two? That's one. And second, given the level you have reached in your work, being a scientist, you have done some work around the world that we read about. Do you have plan to do some work in Liberia, maybe to produce medicine sometime in the future, to say you are the Liberian or accomplished scientist? Will the Liberian accomplished scientist produce something like paracetamol, for example, maybe from Jolobo or something? You thinking of anything like that?
Well, very excellent question. And this has come multiple times in various interviews. First and foremost, I was a student of science at the University of Liberia. And throughout my studies, when I was also simultaneously an activist, a student leader with the Vanguard Student Unification Party and the Liberia National Students Union. I went on to the international stage during my medical studies, where I continued in the international student community with advocacy for global human rights, for democracy, and I was still a medical student. Graduating, I continued my advocacy for democracy, social justice in Liberia, in various oppressed communities in the world, and at the same time continuing my profession. So these two things have been going parallel throughout my life, and they have not had any conflict with each other. The fortunate thing is that I was trained at the university, which promotes social science and social medicine, making me to be far more in contact with the people and looking at my profession from a people's standpoint than looking at it from a commercial side, as you will see in other countries. The second leg to your question, I have done as much as I can, given the circumstances that our country and our continent has gone through, to make the kind of contributions that I have made. I have gone in the country repeatedly, yearly, to lecture at various university and academic institutions, and conduct training workshop at the National Public Health Reference Lab, which is part of the National Public Health Institute. May his soul rest in peace, Dr. Bole and others, along with the Africa Bio Incorporated, headed by Candice Eastman, organized some of these sessions. On the African continent, I have contributed to developing various aspects of the science and training personnel to capacitate our technology and medical diagnostic technologies. I taught at the University of Liberia free of charge for a whole semester. And some of my students are the ones who are now, those who were my students are some of the ones who are now manning the various clinics and hospitals in the country, and some of them are all around the world, making us Liberians and Africa proud. And throughout the course of my career, given my area of focus, I also, as you read, invented a diagnostic technology to detect infectious diseases in a short space of time. And that was made available to the Liberian government during the administration of Madam Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, made available to West Africa and Africa as a whole, so that we could develop it uh, and use it for diagnosing of viral diseases. And if we had done that, we wouldn't be begging countries around for diagnostic tests for COVID-19 today, because the test detects COVID-19 and other infections, including Ebola. So just to summarize, those are the contributions that I have made thus far. Why I continue to engage the political landscape to ensure that the proper conditions are established for science to thrive, for education to thrive, for us to have good medical care, and for the country to be agriculturally successful, which will then bounce back on our economy and make us economically viable.
Thank you so very much. Folks watching us here, Focus on Liberia. Anthony here hosting Focus on Liberia. Dr. Dougbeh Christian is my guest, and I continue to remind all of us he is a Liberian scientist. Dr. Nyan, you also wear a political hat that those of us who follow this thing know about. From your explanation just now, your connection with politics started from your youthful days at the University of Liberia, associated with the Vanguard Student Unification Party. So let's come to this issue of the progressive. Some of us see you as a progressive. So the question is, are you a progressive? Even though some see you, but we want to hear from you. And what are the involvement that you have with the movement for which we should say, yes, he is a progressive?
I rose through the ranks of the liberation movement in Liberia through the movement for justice in Africa initially, and went on to the university and became a member of the Student Unification Party, and of course the Liberia National Students Union. All of us are aware of the role that the movement for justice in Africa played during the period of colonialism in Africa, when it advocated, along with other anti-apartheid groups, for the liberation of the last colonies in Africa, which was Namibia, South Africa, Mozambique, Angola, and one other country, which I may not name now. And those aspects instilled in us a discipline that sometimes is yet to be found in our political landscape today. That discipline of commitment to a particular philosophy, meaning devoting your time to serving the people and not serving individuals. And so we organize around institutions and not individuals. You can see Moja, you can see what the Student Unification Party is today. It has survived all of the intrigues and threats of various dictatorships, including the present political arrangements, which have tried to destabilize SUP for the last 3 years in its existence. SUP has existed for 50 years now, one of the oldest political institutions on the continent of Africa. And we must pride it for its existence, irrespective of its being a student movement. But we've all seen the impact that students have had on our national landscape. Students, including myself, were expelled from school because of advocacy for democracy. These democracies that we have all over the continent today, in Liberia in particular, students were to be executed in 1981, 82 because of the advocacy for democracy. That was the role that our contingent of advocates, who you are now calling progressive, and we don't shy away from that name because it stands for dignity, it stands for honor of the society, it stands for patriotism, and it stands for economic and political liberation, not only of our individual countries, but of the African continent, looking at what Africa has suffered over the years. So yes, that has been our trend, Today, you see on the political landscape a lot of political parties. Today, you see in the media a lot of newspapers, a lot of radio stations. Those were things that the progressives advocated for. Back in the days, it was only one radio station. The other radio station was ELWA. Those in the hinterland could not even get ELBC, which was a state radio station. But we advocated for press freedom. We advocated for human rights. That's what we are enjoying today. We advocated for multi-party democracy, and people died. Some of our colleagues died. And so that is what the progressive is all about. The progressives are not about chasing money. The progressives are not about deceptions. The progressives are about building a society that is viable, that can attend to the needs of the ordinary people, as well as those who are the haves. That economic gains of the country should be equally distributed across the population, and not one group of people consigning themselves with the wealth of the country while the rest of the people suffer. We are against corruption. We are against abuse of women. We are against child abuse. We advocate for all of these things. And so that's our whole landscape. Among the progressives in the past, you have one who I always forgot to name and who I can name now today is Albert Port. You have Wilma Blyden. Then you come to Didwo Toy. You come to people like Charles Coleman. You come to even President William R. Tolbert himself, a Pan-Africanist who was a progressive. Then you come to Sawyer, Tipote, Famule, Alaric Tokpa, Ezekiel Pajibo, Dew Mason, all of these. That's what the progressives are
Dr. Nyan,
about.
if I may interject, I like the fact that you are giving me names and giving us names of individuals who actually were the torch bearers of this idea called progressivism, right? And now, when you look back, do you see the Liberia that you had envisioned and that you were trying to do all in your power to see? Do you see that Liberia today?
It's a very cardinal question that you have just posed. In the struggle for democracy and the upliftment of the lot of the common people, we've always known that it is a process. It's not an event. During the course of that time, there will be glitches and hitches here and there. When we advocated for multi-party democracy, we did not invite the military to step in, but the military intervened and interrupted that process. We advocated against the military. If you will recall, the students' movement was the first to call on the military to go back to the barracks. That statement was made in 1980 March, just 1 month after the military came to power. And that was our conflict, the beginning of our conflict with the military. So we sent the military back to the barracks after 1986, but President Sergeant Doe turned himself into a political figure. We still advocated. We had elections in, those are the elections in 1985, when there was this grand coalition, which actually won the elections with Jackson F. Doe as the head of the ticket. And that election was rigged. We advocated for democracy, for free and fair election after that period. At least we were able to achieve the fact that parties could go to the polls and cast their ballots, and people could cast their ballots. After then, we had the 14-year civil war. That war was unnecessary. It was not invited by the people. It was imposed on them for various means, which we don't know, and for various aggrandizing means, which we don't know, and which we are still studying today. So you can see this interruption in the progressive struggle. For every time that we've reached a zenith of good democracy, good, trying to build a good atmosphere through our advocacy and sacrifices, there will come this external or some other intervention that will disrupt the process. Today, we are also struggling again to maintain a situation whereby the multi-party democracy that we have today will not be disturbed. It will not be it will not be disrupted, and we will go to the polls and have free and fair elections for the third time since 1997. So when you ask me that question, we are still building the democracy and the atmosphere and the social political atmosphere that we want in Liberia. We want a social democratic state where the workers, the people who generate the wealth of the country, are not cheated from the wealth they generate. Look at what we are seeing today. We're seeing corruption. People are not paid. Teachers go unpaid. Medical doctors go unpaid and they're strike. But these are the people who work and bring the money in the country. You have factory workers being laid out because some group of people want to make huge profits. And these are the conditions that are against the people that we continue to fight against in order to make better. So the struggle continues, as we always say.
The struggle continues. That was that popular saying then, and he's saying it still stands. You said just now, we are building. But when I look at the political landscape, I'm not counting Tipota now. I'm not counting Dr. Sawyer. Matthew is gone. You are still energetic. In my definition of somebody being young, you are still young. We don't see you like Kofi Woods and the young progressive then. You guys, back then, through your senior brothers, were leading this building of this democracy, looking for the governance products that will deliver our people. And so you have the training, you have the discipline. I agree 100%. But you are not in the forefront today when you have the education, when you have the training, when you have the discipline. We will see some people on Facebook making all the noise. Is it that you are out of touch today or you are just stuck in the past?
We are actively engaged, if I will put it that way. The system of governance, good governance that we have been struggling to create was not a system that only the progressives or pro-democratic social democrats will enjoy. And so today you see on the political landscape, multiple parties. You see people advocating. Mm-hmm. We've supported all of those processes. At best, it is good for the Liberian people to see other actors during the period of this time. And these actors have revealed themselves as being anti-people, as being corrupt, as being people who do not have the interests of the country at heart, but have been serving their individual parochial interest. All of this has come to the fore. If the progressives did not create the space, we would not have seen all of this happening. Mm-hmm. Today, you see all of the advocacy. You see, people writing on Facebook, people expressing their views. These are the conditions that we were advocating to create. That should go as a credit to the progressives. We still are engaged. We are engaged in various means. The progressives are grouped up at the moment and are conglomerating within the coalition that is currently existing, which is the oldest coalition in Liberia now, which is the National Democratic Coalition. There you have actual...
Dr. Nyan, may I allow you to pause a bit? That eloquence there is not visible. We are coming back somehow, if I can paraphrase it. The NDC you just mentioned, I sometimes read an article and see it. Sometimes like after a year, or sometimes after 9 months or so.
Right.
You're not visible and you know it. So how is it this thing's going to work?
The good thing is that we can distinguish ourselves from those of today. Mm-hmm. One thing is that we don't have stolen wealth. that we can use to continue to cajole the people. On the other hand, most of what you see that is visible today are people who cannot justify how they accumulated their wealth. It was on the back of our people, the Liberian people, during the course of the Civil War, during the course of various administrations where money went missing and they were unaccounted for. And these monies have been used by these people to circulate and recirculate themselves in power. Use that to cajole our people and then suppress the rest of the voices, like the progressive voices that we are talking about today.
Dr. Nyan, may I interrupt you? I'm not talking about the corruption aspect of it. When you guys and your big brothers were advocating, you didn't have money then, but you have your voices. You were visible. You were seen in the counties. You were heard on the radios. We were seeing your writing in the papers. We don't see you online. If we see you, it's just after 6 months. That is what I'm talking about. There are some political neophytes who control the narrative. Why are you not controlling the narrative? The narrative is key today.
It could be really tactical, like we said. Controlling the narrative is one thing, but how you control the narrative is another thing. Is it a qualitative control of the narrative? What are they spewing out? What are they saying to the Liberian people? What are their aims and aspirations? And as we said, it may be a tactical stance to allow these actors to play so as to continuously expose themselves. And we've seen that today. You may say the progressives are silent, but the noise that is being made, how qualitative it is, how beneficial it is to the people.
But Dr. Nyan, CDC make that noise and CDC got power. Some folks are making noise today. Dillon made a very good noise. He got power, something some of you have not been able to do for years.
Quite correctly. Nevertheless, the very people you are talking about, if you look at the political landscape today, you will find the progressives in all of those political parties. Their particular political engines are run by people of progressive tendencies. So if that is a contribution that we have made to the process, to have this interplay of ideas where you have, progressives coming from our end, going into those political parties and making their mark in there. That is an achievement. Nevertheless, the progressives who you can find in the United People's Party, the Liberian People's Party, you must understand that these particular entities have been suppressed for the most part throughout their lifetime. Samuel Doe banned the Unity Party and he banned the Liberian People's Party. Let's come back to that. And what did we do? We pump our engine into the Liberation Actions Party and mobilized the masses of the people, and the Liberation Action Party, headed by Jackson F. Doe, won that elections that year, which was rigged by President Doe.
Good effort then. What is the effort now? Is that the MDC that we don't see?
The National Democratic Coalition has been organizing. It is at a stage where once it has its bearings, once it has everything that it takes coming out of this oppressive situation that have been mounted on it, you will note that the legal settings of the National Democratic Coalition was heavily weighed upon by the past elections commission. It had to struggle to get through that. So you see, sometimes the space we create and the same actors who take over those stages come back to suppress us and the rest of the people. So just as you've seen the interest of the people being suppressed, there are no jobs, their rights have been violated, freedom of press has been violated, so too is the progressive institutions that guide these things being suppressed. So I hope you understand that it is a continuous struggle for our self-liberation, institutional liberation, and the liberation of our people. I will leave it at that. And if you ask any further question, we can go into it. But I hope you understand the context within which I am telling you the National Democratic Coalition, and the rest of the social democratic forces in the country are currently operating under very difficult circumstances.
Well, what we see also is that the progressives have always made effort to participate in electoral activities, elections. From my reading of history, your record is so bad, very, very bad. Do you hold yourself responsible for these electoral failures, or do you hold the Liberian people responsible?
I'm not sure how your categorization of bad, will stand. For the most part, if you look at the trend, the political dynamics through which our country has gone over the years, with the military coup, with the intervening civil war, with the scattering of our people, the coming back of our people, being in exile for so long a time, picking up different tendencies, that has played an enormous role in why voters' apathy and the level of our people of even grasping and understanding their own rights have become difficult to grasp. There has been enormous voters' education in order to make our people to understand that you don't have to get a cup of rice from a politician to vote for them. You must vote on principles. You must vote on quality. The progressives have helped to mobilize the Liberian masses and the Liberian people throughout these elections, carrying out various voters' education exercises along with others. If you look at the trend, you will see that those who were yesterday saying, "You came mama, you came papa, I will vote for you," can no longer comfortably sing that song. If you look at those who are saying now, whether you know book or you don't know book, I will vote for you, or come and vote for me, they are no longer saying that. People have becoming qualitative in their thinking and becoming very critical in their thinking. You see the elections, this gone elections, the midterm elections, where the current political arrangement came and executed cash violence. But the people did not buy that. With all the money that was spent by other candidates from the ruling party, most of them, even their star candidates, were defeated. And so you can see the level of consciousness that has been built in our people after the Civil War. Pre-Civil War, you can attest to how much the progressives did that led to the defeat of Samuel Doe in the general elections, that led to even the Tobos regime having it difficult to hold or mayoral elections when Dr. Amos Sawyer was running against Chuchu Horton. Today, you can also see the same trend where this political establishment are still suppressing the progressive because they know these are the true voices of the people. You can see the disgruntlement of our people today, that they are not satisfied with what is going on. They have their own issues with the past 12 years. They have their issues with the present past 3.5 years. And so that mass education continues. The United States, you see today where you are, did not reach the stage it is overnight. It is 200 plus years old. And you can see what the very progressives are going through in the United States. You can see how they have struggled and how they have tried to transform the Democratic Party. And they are now becoming the most heard voice in the Democratic Party, led by Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, both who are senators in the US Senate. You can look at the same picture in Liberia.
Thank you, Dr. Yan. I appreciate that answer, but I'm not satisfied. But we have to make progress because the Bernie Sanders, the Elizabeth Warren you talk about, they are visible. They are senators. All right, and they are active politically. But you guys are still working on this thing, and you guys don't control the narrative. The Democratic Party control the narrative. They engaging the Republican Party foot to foot on national issues. But all I'm hearing from you here is that, well, we're being suppressed. Who's suppressing you? We are suppressing you. When a ruthless thought man was suppressing you guys never shut up. You guys never ran away to say, okay, I'm going to ask that, so I'm not going to talk. But what we see is you guys are kind of quiet. But again, maybe times have changed, and so you guys are leaving the stage. You said something earlier.
And let me just come on you on that to add to you.
Mm-hmm.
Again, the progressives are not to dominate.
Why not?
Exactly. The fact that you have people who are on the stage presently should be applauded. It doesn't necessarily mean that we have to always come and control narratives and all of that. Then you don't have a democracy.
Do you still want power?
Then we are usurping the democratic space.
I agree. Do you still want power, Dr. Nyan? Do you still want power?
There is no political entity that does not want state power.
But then walk like somebody who wants power. I don't see that.
At the time, the interest and the most important plank of the progressive was to create the space where there will be multi-party democracy. And that's what we are having today. Now, how others are utilizing that space is what I think the Liberian people should be concerned about. We are there. We've been making statements. We've been engaging. And we have been creating the necessary mechanism and the engine pumped into the various political parties you see today. We don't necessarily have to come and do the yo every day to know that we are working.
And allow me to jump on that.
I think you should respect that tactical aspect of our existence.
Okay, allow me to jump on that. So does it mean, because earlier you said that the progressives are in other political parties, does it mean that the progressives have disintegrated into other political parties and have taken a back seat? For example,
no.
What's his name? Commander Wissa comes to mind. He's in the United Party. He's more like in the back end or something. Is that what we see today? Alari Dougbeh have been making effort, to represent his people, and he has not been successful. Tipote tried. He failed. He tried multiple times. Formula. I don't know. Why is it? Is this something that you people doing wrong, for which the Liberian people not seeing you?
You see, again, when you ask those questions, you tend to want to blur the achievements, the democratic achievements that we have had over the years that the progressive struggle have produced. When you ask those kind of questions, that's what it would.
This time I'm talking about victory. I appreciate you guys' contribution, but I'm talking about victory. You have done so well, in my opinion, about telling our people what government should be, what a country should be. You done excellently well. But those very people, whenever you say, hey, I want to be president, I want to be senator, they don't vote for you. Something is wrong with that picture. What it is? Tell me.
I have explained to you the intervening political crisis, which I think you should kind of take into consideration.
Okay.
Right. We were not responsible for the 14-year civil war. The 14-year civil war disrupted our people's lives. The mentality of the people you have, the mentality of the people that you have, the mentality of the way people were living in the refugee camps, in exile, and all of that, there are different thinking and political school of thought that have come back home. The generation you had during the days of the Tipote and the Sawyers and the Matthews is not the generation you have today. We have in our country what I referred to when I was national orator in 2016 in some of the interviews. We have what we call a lost generation that does not even know the history of Liberia fully. That does not know that Liberia had its own airlines, Air Liberia. That does not know that Liberia was instrumental in the creation of the United Nations, instrumental in the creation of most of the international organizations. Even some of the people that you have in government today don't even understand what government is and what Liberia's contribution and what Liberia has been. So when you have this deficiency in the level of thought, that gives a whole new round of struggle. And those who are there to thrive and prey on the ignorance and the knowledge gap of this generation are the ones who are thriving on that, using cash violence and using stolen wealth in order to perpetuate themselves in power every time. This is the new wave of struggle that we are now picking up. How do you educate the people? How so that they come back to probably to the pre-1990 stage, to be able to critically think and know that those that we have in our parliament, in our legislature, are there to represent us, and they are not there to represent themselves. How do you tell the people that representative should not be making $15,000 a month when there are no books in the schools, when the schools are dilapidated, the hospitals are dilapidated, but they find themselves as representatives making this huge amount of money? These are the things that we need to continue to educate our people on. And these are things that the progressives have been doing. This whole societal revitalization, the whole societal re-education is what we have been involved with. The politics of the day as to who does this and what you do in our own respective professions and as a collective, we have been handling issues as they come about, and we find it necessary. So I think, like I said, if you begin to say those things, then you are ignoring the actual trend of our history and the knowledge deficit of this generation that we, call more or less the lost generation, and they are not responsible for that. But this is the kind of situation that the corrupt politicians thrive on and recirculate themselves in power every time.
Well, you got me thinking about Bernie Sanders again. An old man, I believe he in 70s. Most of his supporters are people in their 20s and 30s. They are Americans. I live here. Not all Americans know their history. No. The same with Liberia. But these young people, some way, somehow, gravitate to Bernie Sanders. To think that because we have war and many people don't know the history, that is what, when they see something good, they don't know it, it is something to think about. But let me progress, Dr. Nyan. That come to Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, another era, if I can pull it that way, in Liberia. When she was in power, a lot of things happened. There's a debate about whether she did good and she did bad. My observation was that majority of the progressive were more like silent. And now today, at least they're speaking a little bit. What is going on there?
There may be some contradictions in what you're saying.
Please sharpen that.
If previously you said that the progressive are silent, they're not doing anything, and now you are saying at least they are speaking a little bit, then it brings me back to your previous question.
Go ahead.
But leaving that constant, here is a situation. When we came from the 14-year Civil War, we elected Taylor. After that, there was another round of war, civil conflict. We went back to the polls in 2005, and the Unity Party came to power. One thing we can look at during the 12 years of rule of the Unity Party is the fact that, one, we were able to attain some relative stability in 12 years. We were able to attain relative peace in 12 years, in those 12 years. Institutions were being built within those 12 years. Governance structures were being revitalized in those 12 years. infrastructures were being reconstructed in the 12 years. Those who visited Liberia from the time of the war to like 2005, with all of those bullet-ridden homes and dilapidated infrastructure, going back 10 years after, saw a difference. We can give them that credit. They were able to cancel out Liberia's international debt. We gave them that credit also. But when you look on the other side of the coin, we saw massive corruption. We saw schools still being the educational system still being revitalized, which our president then herself described as a mess. That our educational system is a mess. She also acknowledged that corruption was a huge gorilla. She also acknowledged and took responsibility of some of the lapses at every point in time. So you can see more or less two sides to what the United Party did in 12 years. When you come to today, we see a situation whereby the current government thrive on the same corruption, thrive on the little gains that were made in the past 12 years, but have failed to, or is failing to bring corrupt actors actually to book. It is failing to do those things that it was to go against those things that it was criticizing for 12 years when it was in the opposition. We have to understand that there should be no justification for repeating corruption because corruption existed yesterday. There should be no justification for abusing human rights when in the past there were efforts being made to respect the press, to respect press freedom and respect human rights. So that is the kind of picture that we see of yesterday, and that is the picture that we are currently seeing today. It is incumbent upon anyone who comes to power to better up the lot of the people instead of using the past corrupt attitudes as a yardstick to perpetrate more corruption. I don't think it is acceptable to you. I don't think that is acceptable to the Liberian people. And I don't think that is acceptable to the world. You can also see that the past administration did everything possible to bring Liberia back into the community of nations. Today, Liberia is hardly noticed, even in our sub-region, even in our in ECOWAS, even on the African continent, let alone talking about it being noticed in the international community. These are actual facts that we should not ignore. Liberia's image has gone bad over the last 3 years, and it is incumbent upon you, myself, and others to continue to advocate for a process whereby we will have a leadership visionary enough that will bring Liberia back to the status it was and to regain that glory that we had pre-colonial times, during colonial times, and during the neo-colonial times.
Thank you so very much, folks, watching or here. Focus on Liberia. Dr. Dougbeh Nyan is my guest, and we are talking about a lot of issues today. We will now move to this segment. We are already into politics, political party governance, and the road to 2023. And how can we better get started in this segment other than to get a definitive answer about whether or not Dougbeh Nyan is thinking of becoming a candidate in any capacity comes 2023. Are you? What guy on your mind?
This is an interesting question that comes up every time now. I was asked the same question when I was on Cool FM in Liberia. Mm-hmm. One thing that I can say is that I have the right and my rights is guaranteed. My rights are guaranteed by the Constitution to run for any office that I want to, that I'm qualified for and I can run for.
Mm-hmm.
How that happens will be determined by the political circumstances and the trending political issues, and whether I do that will be determined by the Liberian people. And that's a fair answer that I continue to give. It will not be dependent on me. I am an institutional person. I rely on institutional backing, institutional principles. So what we have continued to promote again is this question of institutionalism, so that people are not, individualizing politics, so that political parties are not based on individuals, the aspiration of an individual. They should be based on the principles and the tenets. And I think it is the institution, like how I was brought up throughout the progressive time, throughout the progressive community, is the institution that always determined at a particular point in time, given a particular circumstances, who we put forth as our leader. You see the same thing in the Student Unification Party still going on today. You saw that in LPP, you saw that in Moja, you saw that in UPP.
Well, Dr. Yan, let me interrupt you, Dr. Yan. There's nothing wrong with you saying, hey, I have interest or I will be contesting for my institution nomination. There's nothing wrong with that. I don't think it goes against the institution's values. So for me, I can say to you, I'm not running for anything comes 2023.
Oh, that's really good for you. Don't say that.
But you can say that easily other than saying those are my rights, they are guaranteed under the Constitution.
No, don't say that.
Okay.
You can, and this is where we have to be very careful.
Okay.
You cannot say, I am not running for anything. What if your people come to you and said, we know you said that, but we want you to run, to become, representative, to become senator, to run for this office. Mm-hmm. So you can say that. And that is why I'm coming back on that to say it is dependent on the aspiration of the people and is dependent on the institutions that you affiliate with that guide those aspirations. We are trying to remove individualism out of politics, for which if an individual leaves, then political parties break down. If an individual is there, the political parties center around that individual. We don't have institutions, and our interest is to build institutions, and that is why my decisions will be institutionally based.
Thank you so very much. I will take that for a yes. Please don't blame me. That's my thinking. And let me progress here. So there are a lot of issues in Liberia that anybody with any institution who has the potential to become a leader who want to, have a position on. So let's start with the War and Economic Crimes Code. It's in the news today. Will you say it's something you support? Will you also say that it's timely now, or was it timely then and it's not timely now? Where do you stand?
The thing of War and Economic Crimes Code is something that comes out every time after a country goes through conflicts. Mm-hmm. I mean, we see that in Nazi Germany. Yeah. We saw that in South Africa. We also saw that in Rwanda, where I'm based most of the time in East Africa. There is a need to put into effect and to actualize the TRC report. It was constitutionally determined that should happen. Mm-hmm. My hope is that whatever government that is in power will utilize all of the state functionaries, the state instruments that are responsible to mobilize even the international support that is available in order to realize the putting into effect the TRC's report, either as an economic crime investigation or as war crime investigation, or both. One other thing that we are seeing happening also during the course of this time is the abuse of the academic setting in Liberia during the wartime and during this time. And most people tend to ignore that, for which if you follow the trending internet discussion sometimes, there is a call for academic crimes court. So those are three things that we need to implement in Liberia: war crimes court, prosecution of war crimes, prosecution of economic crimes, and prosecution of academic crimes for people who are destroying, are undermining, like your academic achievement. Other people come and bring bogus degrees from wherever, and they are earning more in Liberia than people who are actually, who actually earn their degrees. There are people who are being paid our taxpayers' money, although they perpetrated crimes during the war. There are people who have corrupted our money, the country's coffers, and they are still being paid and they are meeting in the system. So these three aspects have to be dealt with. And that's something that we have continuously supported over the years.
Dr. Nyan, I want something definitive here. There are some people, let me make it clear, the CDC feels that when Ellen was in power, when we had United Nations peacekeeping troops in Liberia, was the proper time for us to have established the War and Economic Crime Court. They are saying this is not a time. Our goal now is to keep the peace. Do they have a point?
No, they don't have a point. When you compare that to Rwanda, after the war in Rwanda, the Rwandan government itself carried out their truth and reconciliation process. They didn't wait for France. You know the role France played in that war. If you remember the Rwandan crisis, where almost 800,000 people died within 100 days, were murdered. It was a genocide. But if you go to Rwanda today, the country is as peaceful. You wouldn't even know that this country went through this hell. But here we are. We went through the same situation during the same period. 20 years after, we are still talking about war and economic crime court. The CDC government has no justifications. As I stated, when I compare the two periods earlier, the Ellen Johnson Sirleaf government created the grounds for what would happen afterwards. If you can look at that, I said they put together institutions. They were, building institutions, governance institutions, and you name it. So this.
But Dr. Nyan, it didn't take the Rwandans 12 years to build up and to establish a war crime court, isn't it? It didn't take the Sierra Leone 12 years after to establish their war crime court, isn't it? So why don't we hold the Unity Party accountable? Because they have a lot of time on their hands to do so.
That is a different question you are asking me. You are talking about CDC. Now you are saying Unity Party.
I'm reinforcing that question, so go ahead.
Okay. If it is a new question, I can definitely say both administrations have to be held responsible for why the Economic and War Crime Court were not, the TRC report were not implemented. You can excuse anybody for that. Whatever their reasons, you will need to really bring on the, former justice ministers of the previous government and some dignitaries of the previous government to answer those specific questions. But from an activist point, from a political, social activist point of view, there is no excuse for any government from the time the war ended to this present time for the War and Economic Crimes Court not to have been implemented. And that is why I gave you the example of Rwanda, because we went through the same period. You brought in Sierra Leone. That would have been actually my next example, meaning even next door Sierra Leone. They carry out the process to what I may classify as a successful conclusion. And so Liberia needs to do better than that. And again, coming back to previous questions you asked me, these are some of the issues that are retarding the political situation, the economic growth of our country, and the whole issue of advocacy. If you can see these kind of things being suppressed, then why don't you think that people who advocate for these will not be suppressed? There were some of the suppressions of the progressives inertly, directly or indirectly, has come to the fore.
Dr. Nyan, when Ebola started, I remember there was a time the government was making some effort to get some contact tracers. And you gave what many saw as an expert opinion, being somebody in the area of infectious disease. But my understanding is that the government did not take kindly to that. And there was this exchange between you and the mayor. How you felt about that, and how did you pass that?
To correct you, I did not have any exchange with any mayor.
Okay.
This is and again, to correct a situation, it was not the Ebola crisis or the Ebola outbreak. It was
I meant Corona. Sorry,
Corona,
thank you for bringing
yes.
that up. I meant to say Corona. Thank you so much.
No, you're most welcome. It was the COVID-19.
COVID-19, yeah.
And just as you said, it was a pure expert, advice from experience. We did advise that contact tracers that we trained during the Ebola outbreak, and I know that's where the Ebola thing came in your mind.
Right.
Yeah, during the Ebola outbreak, we had about 2,000 plus of those kinds of public health technocrats in various aspects of public health, contact tracing, case finding, epidemiological data processing. They received training anywhere from 3 months to 9, 12 months. Some of them went to the United States where you are and got further training at the US Center for Disease Control, CDC, which is the medical CDC. I always make this clarification so that whenever I say CDC, the CDC people in Liberia jump up on me. So I'm talking about the medical Center for Disease Control, CDC. These technocrats were trained, and that was our vision. Just as you said, I have put in for the creation of the Africa Center for Disease Control and various public health entities. And the Americans came to our aid, the other countries came to our aid and yield to our proposals, and these things were created. That's how the National Public Health Institute of Liberia was also established. So we had this structure already. What sense did it make for the Monrovia City Corporation to want to train 6,000 contact tracers, recruit what they call 6,000 contact tracers, and that it was going to train them and was going to deploy them to do contact tracing? If you look at that, it didn't make any scientific sense. It didn't make any political sense either. There and then, resources that would have been used for fighting the corona pandemic would have been diverted to training these 6,000 quote unquote people that were being recruited by the Monrovia City Corporation. That would have been misappropriation, which is corruption. And I strictly said it is scientifically and epidemiologically wrong to do that, and it will give rise to corruption, given the explanation that I have just given. And that was the fact. They didn't take kindly to that. But fast forward, everything that I said was validated later on by their own actions. The pandemic response was very well, not well coordinated. The government of President Weah even instituted an investigation into the workings of the National Public Health Institute. On that investigation was the representative of the Center for Disease Control in Liberia and the WHO representative in Liberia. They were on that investigation, which I also criticized that they should not have been on that investigation because they themselves needed to have been questioned as to how they have been guiding the pandemic response. But it came out indicating that there were a lot of financial mismanagement in this process of this COVID-19 pandemic response. There were unscientific approaches taken. So everything that I said was validated by the very government. I think they owe me an apology.
And you think you're going to get it?
It's just a rhetorical question I'm throwing out there.
Okay.
But they do owe me an apology. I don't necessarily...
Do you see yourself as a critic of this government? If so, why?
I am not a friend, or let's put it this way. Through my advocacy and activism, I've never been a friend of any government.
Are you a troublemaker?
I was arrested by the Dougbeh government. I was in prison. I was expelled from school. And I was exiled. During my advocacy against the war, we had issues with the Taylor regime. I couldn't go in. And during the Ellen period, I also criticized things that were, that were not appropriate, as you will see during my national oration on July 26, 2016. I made those very clear and provided suggestions, as I always do. And she took that kindly and said, "Thank you for your patriotic oration." She took that very kindly because it was not insulting anybody. It was not denigrating anyone, but it was recognizing those vices in our society and in the administration at the time and providing suggestions as to how the country can move forward. Today, the Coalition for Democratic Change government is looking at me in a different view when I'm continuing to do what I did in the past. So that is why I said I have never been a friend of any government in the past and even now. I criticize and provide suggestions. And as it has come to be seen, every criticism that I have ever made, every critical review of the government, not wanting to allow demonstrations, for example, how difficult it is to allow people to just demonstrate. I said, allow June 7th to go on. Let the people demonstrate, let them express themselves. President Weah, go out there, talk to the people. President Salif did that during the students' crisis when she was going to work and there was a student demonstration. She stopped and talked to the students and they had an amicable resolution. And I made the same suggestion. I said the people have the right to demonstrate. That's a constitutionally guaranteed right. You cannot violate that. But go out there and dialogue. But they take one side and leave the other side. But at the end of the day, they come to realize that what you said was correct. The sincerity to come out to say you were right, thank you, and we apologize, is what is lacking on their side.
Let's come to the road to 2023. What we see is that many are reducing the choice for the next president to the CDC and the CPP, leaving the NDC, the Rainbow Coalition, and people out. Does that bother you?
No, it doesn't bother me at all. Why? Because here's the thing. When we were advocating for multi-party democracy, even through the 1990s, during the war, and it would interest you to note that the National Democratic Coalition, which is comprised of the New Deal movement and the Free Democratic Party, and particularly the New Deal movement, was very instrumental during the Accra peace talks, if you did follow that.
Yes.
We were cardinal in making those decisions. We set the pace. We, if I can put it that way, politically hindered and pressured, the Taylor government. And we had the Accra peace talks coming to a successful conclusion. If you don't want to credit the progressives for that, then I don't know what else you credit them for.
But if I may add that, hold on, Dr. Nyan, I remember during the Taylor days, the New Deal movement was the only political party that was on the neck of Taylor. I remember that. Go ahead.
That is correct. That is correct. And we created a space for other parties. Now, coming to that point quickly, our postulation was immediately after the 1997 elections, we had advised and postulated. That was Professor Alari Topa, myself, Professor George Klekie, and Nimba Uyapla. We, in the committee of the New Deal movement, postulated and advised that no political party should be banned, because people were saying the country is too small and then we have 20 political parties. We say yes, because we saw that as a big achievement, as an interplay of ideas, that the political dynamics during the course of time will make political parties to conglomerate into clusters. And that is exactly what we are seeing today. We are seeing the formation of coalitions. We have the National Democratic Coalition. We have the Coalition for Democratic Change. Then we have the CPP, which is actually not a coalition. Let's be very careful. It is an arrangement that was leading to a coalition, and it has not yet come to that stance. But it is an arrangement that is going towards
it is a coalition. They signed their framework. They signed their framework, and in their framework, when you read it, they call themselves an alliance. That's what I know. Go ahead.
Well, we'll leave the technical aspects to the politicians and others to handle that.
And you are a politician, so maybe you can handle that for us.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So, but what I'm saying is, irrespective of what was going on in the CDC, which is the Congress for Democratic Change, you see them meeting some sort of cohesion, although there was internal friction. That happens in every institution. In the CPP, it looks like a loose confederation where anybody has, the right to do anything they want to do, go around, do anything you want to do, but we are together.
Is that a good thing about it?
It's not. And that is where I talk about 8 years not reaching that coalition status. Because when you talk about a coalition, you are saying we are one, and we move with one voice, we move with one statement. But here is the CPP, where you have the Unity Party putting up one statement on an issue, the Liberty Party is putting up another statement. It's a loose confederation. And our postulation was that if they are not careful, and we said this long ago, it may break up. There will be no cohesion. And we are seeing the semblances of that disunity. We have been seeing the semblances of that disunity over the period of time. The infighting of supporters of each of those individual entities. Then the head-on collision of those who are the either de facto standard bearers or quote-unquote political leaders or, immediate advocates of those. You see that head-on collision. You don't see that in the NDC. You don't see that going on in the Rainbow Coalition. You don't see that in the current CDC that is ruling us. I mean, as I acknowledge, there is friction in there. There was. They try to iron it out, and these things go on. But within the CPP, where the Liberian people, let's be realistic, had their hope, that hope is being dampened. And if they are not careful, you may have a third alternative force emerging that will displace them.
And with that third force, should it emerge be the NDC?
It could be anybody.
Why not the NDC that you are
It
part
can
of?
be the NDC.
Okay.
But I don't just want to be selfish,
Mm-hmm.
you know, with you know, because we're talking about multi-party democracy here. That's why I'm not, you know, laying more emphasis on NDC. But the NDC is prepared to step in at some particular point in time, and strategically too.
Yeah. So looking at the fire that you see on the hill meaning here the CPP, should this whole CPP thing disintegrate? Does it mean that it better get chances of President Weah or not?
Uh, uh, If you look at the last election results,
Mm-hmm.
the two most popular political parties presently, as individual political parties,
Mm-hmm.
are the CDC. I'm talking about political CDC now.
Yeah, political party CDC.
Political party CDC and the Unity Party. In the first round, the Unity Party numbers doubled the numbers, the percentage of both the ANC and the Liberty Party combined. You can also even add the ALP in there. So there is a strength in the LP and ANC being very, very patient and harnessing all their energy and collaborating. And this is where I'm using the word collaborating, not just loose alliance, collaborating with the Unity Party. Now, if they don't do that, the Unity Party still maintains a high popularity. And we are basing on those numbers. And this is where the political scientist aspect comes in, as we discussed. There are natural scientists and there are political scientists.
Yeah.
And all of that are guided by facts and evidence. And we are looking at those numbers. Mind you, it is unfortunate that our journalists, you know, don't carry out these periodic polling, you know, independent periodic polling to tell us what is going on so that we can become, you know, scientifically informed as to how the dynamics, the electoral dynamics is shaping up. But if you take a rough polling, which we have done, you know, very quietly, and then other things that really I can say here, quietly, you will see that there is a massive loss of support for the current ruling party.
Okay.
There is that tendency of apathy for the current ruling party. Even within the current ruling party, there are a lot of disgruntled partisans who have now become apathetic and they are neutral and they are ready to go to areas where they really saw the vision of coming into power and improving the lot of the people than being saddled with corruption scandal, moral scandals, and all of these things that are very distractional and have brought the party to disrepute. So that group of voters are there, and they are tilting towards, you know, any neutral or any group that is ready to absorb them. The Unity Party could stand a good chance. The NDC could stand a good chance because the NDC itself has not been in power. It has honest people, just as you know, you have said already. It has, you know, people who don't have, you know, blood on their hands. You can take anybody from the NDC and carry them to war crime court. They have, you know, educated people who earn their degrees very honestly. So you cannot take any one of them to academic crime court either. These are the tendencies that you find out there that are not yet come to the fore. And at a particular point in time, that third force may emerge. Whether it combines with the Unity Party, if this loose confederation breaks up ultimately or not, that is yet to be seen. But I think the CPP should be well guided. They should put their acts together. But I find it almost pretty too late because they have been acting individually. You have party leaders and partisans running political campaigns individually when we are not at election time yet, which I think is an affront to other political parties within that arrangement. You don't see the Free Democratic Party going around running campaign, or the New Deal running campaign, whereby they are both in the NDC. You don't see that. They work together, they work as NDC, and all the statements that have come out says NDC. That's the difference.
Dr. Nyan, I'm intrigued by the Unity Party scenario you kind of explained. I'm sure you will well remember Ellen Johnson Sirleaf's role in the unsuccessful context of the Unity Party. She's now with them. She's their playmaker. Unity Party was successful, I can argue, singularly so because of her presence. When she left, it went down in shame. She's not there. We see her with the Liberty Party. I'm sure from my calculation, there where she's going to push the political line. And then I see leaders in the Liberty Party having Mr. Alexander Benedict Cummings' phone number. They're talking with him. We have a picture of him staying with Hassan Belete, the chairman of that party. They are business friends as well as political friends now, and Ellen there. Should the Liberty Party and the ANC decide to say, we chart our own course, would that threaten the Unity Party chances significantly, knowing that Ellen can go in there and pull people out?
I think it's a scenario to continue to watch with very keen eyes. President, the victory of President Weah has various facets to it. He was a very popular, figure, undeniably. So I mean, he flew the Liberian flag, in the sports war when Liberia was in quote unquote the political dark ages, and he gained a lot of popularity. Throughout the time, that popularity was put to test, at least at the end of the gone 12-year period. And so he won the elections. Mind you, during the period of that time, there was political friction within the Unity Party. You see, while we talk about cohesion in any process, that friction in the Unity Party cost them a lot. It cost them a lot of distraction, as a result of which they were not able to mount an effective campaign because they were focusing on more internal issues than focusing on the campaign and the electoral outcome at the end of the day. I will hold it at that. Anybody has the right to visit anyone, to associate with anybody in a political realm. When I go to Monrovia, I know in the past, I called both when there were these issues, I had called both the CDC chairman back then and the Unity Party chairman also back then, in order for us to sit, and talk and talk about politics being mutual and cordial. So sitting with any one of them would not necessarily mean that I am, now bedding with Unity Party or anyone. But to your point, I'm not going to allude to statements that, Madame Sirleaf is with this group now and that. I don't have any evidence to that.
Okay.
Presently. Nevertheless, we are closely watching the electoral dynamics. I'm not sure if, given the statistics that I have just gone through in the last elections, and looking at the trend of voter apathy on the one side and their migration on the other hand, I am not seeing that a Liberty Party or an ANC breaking away from the Unity Party will do them any good. I'm not seeing that. It will not do them any good. Why? Because of the 3.5 years, we can put it that way, of bad governance of the current administration and the manner in which Omer Boakai lost the elections. There may be a lot of sympathy for him.
I agree with that one.
And if I talk about this apathy on the one hand and a sympathy vote driving in the other corner, it may go for him or it may go for a third party. The present situation that just occurred, whereby there was a recorded tip that emerged of the vice chairman of the Liberty Party discussing a clandestine move to connive with the
ANC,
the Alternative National Congress. Sometimes I kind of, prevent myself from saying ANC because I don't want it conflicting with the African National Congress, which we as progressives supported.
Mm-hmm.
So I will always call out their name, Alternative National Congress. That shows the highest level of deception. The Liberty Party did not deny that. As a matter of fact, they took one step in removing that high-level official, and just for 2 months, and they said they were going to carry out some investigation. The question that is on the minds of many is, why just with such a grave infraction, why 2 months suspension? Is it just a pat on the back? The second question is, what are they investigating? The evidence is already there. It was done, it was committed. The action taken by them should have been much graver than that, instead of a 2-month suspension and then going towards investigation. But probably that is their own party mechanism.
But Dr. Nyan, will an action change the reality?
Mind you, that is not my point. The reality, it has already happened. And I said that was the greatest of deception during this political period, because it was exposed. And there have been a lot of speculations on that. And that speculation has become validated by that kind of action. I don't think it puts the Alternative National Congress and the Liberty Party in a good picture with the Liberian people. The Liberian people are now looking for honesty. They're looking for dignity. They're looking for integrity. So to have that kind of connivance against a group or against one entity, whereby you say you are, a collaboration. And again, I told you, I have indicated that there was a loose federation. And you see some of the semblances of that looseness taking place. That is why it must be of grave concern to both the Liberty Party and the Alternative National Congress. I believe from keen political observation that the Unity Party stands to gain more from that incident. And the earlier they can take decisions to either really collaborate or go their separate ways, the better it will be for all of those four entities that are within that collaborating political party.
I believe that, and I said that too some time back. Well, we are about closing. Joshua is our president now. Whether or not we disagree with him on policy, on approach, on performance, he is our president, and our people are at his governance mercy. if he should turn things around or better things, it will be good for some Liberians, and we should encourage that. I want you to tell us first whether there is a need for a reshuffle to retool the government, and whether in any way it's going to do any good at all. Talking about reshuffle.
You know, if you're dealing with people, you need to look at their psychology. I have dealt with, a lot of ethnicities and nationalities, throughout my lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
I found Liberians, not because I am one, but I found Liberians to be some of the most forgiving people on earth.
Mm-hmm.
They're very quick to forgive, very quick. And we always said we're quick to forget,
Mm-hmm.
Very quick to forgive. If with all of these 3.5 years of problems that have besetted this government, if President Weah should take on the advice that have been given him, those pieces of advice that have been given him over and over, which his inner cycles have shrunk, and begin to use them now, utilize them, he could turn things around. Mind you, President Weah is still popular. He is losing popularity. You see, it's a process. Nobody should think that President Weah is unpopular. No, he is losing it. It's a dynamic process. It doesn't happen overnight.
Right.
And so if he can arrest that situation here now, President Weah, I hope you are listening. Every time I talk on air, I try to address you sometimes directly.
Mm-hmm.
If he can turn things, if he can address those concerns of the society presently, the corruption issue, those who have, have been seen to have carried out some of the widest of corruption in his government now, the bad governance in the whole financial sector, in the administrative aspect, if he should reshuffle and bring in people of quality, people of international reputation, of national respect, those are the people that will be his eyes, and those are the people that will be his guide. The international community will begin to re-evaluate and begin to think, to have a second thought of him. The Liberian people will begin to feel that he is now doing what they wanted him to do. That is the aspect that he needs to focus on. If he has the will, the political will to do that. If not, he will continue to be depopularized. And this particular mistake is actually self-inflicted. And the opposition, and I always hate to use the word opposition because the Western world always classify our people who are not in power as opposition, as if we are fighting each other. They never ever call themselves opposition. You never ever heard the Republican Party now being called opposition. No, they will always say Republican Party, Social Democratic Party of Germany, and that. They don't say opposition. But when it comes to Africa, they say opposition. They put us in a fighting mood. We should desist from that. I just wanted to advise all of us. So sometimes I refuse to use that word opposition. When I use it, I put it in quotes. Nevertheless, for purpose of this, the parties that are not in power, that are now fighting to get back in power or get power, should do the best they can to capitalize on this. And it is the prerogative of the present government to listen to all of these criticisms and reshape itself for the better.
You mention people who are corrupt in the administrative cycle, in the financial sectors. I want you to man up here. Do you know some of them?
I mean, it is not a secret that there have been a lot of human rights violations, closure of newspapers and radio stations. When I say newspapers, I mean, internet publications and the stuff. from the very radio stations that carry out those publications. You have Punch FM, for example, has never gotten its license since it applied, but other radio stations have come out to gain their license. You have Roots FM was closed down and its equipment taken from its facility. That has now been resolved. That has created a bad image for the government in terms of human rights violation and violation of the press. The Ministry of Information is responsible for that. And whoever was the head or is the head is largely responsible for that. In fact, just recently, we have seen the Minister of Information issuing a statement against a talk show host not hosting against a radio station, you know, for attempting to transmit the broadcast of this talk show host, Helen Costa. I think it's D5 or D10 radio, one of the radio stations.
D15.
D15, exactly.
I think they call it Busher Radio or something.
That's correct. So and do you think the international community take kindly to this? No. So those responsible for those kind of decisions have to be removed. We also saw the whole question of this $16 billion. It is something that will continue to haunt this government. Whoever was responsible for that, there were investigations done. We also saw the $25 million mop up. It was saddled with a lot of controversy. Reports coming out indicated that it was not properly done, and there were, you know, misappropriations, etc., leading to corruption. We also saw the misappropriation of funds of the WFP $30 million food program. Some of the things that I critically look at and advise the government on, that there was no need for such a program. Instead, the government needed to take some of that money and invest it into vaccine production, into the vaccine companies. The report that came out recently indicated that there was bad management in terms of the finances and all of that. So those who are responsible for those major malfeasance in this government need to be changed. Okay. If you don't do that, the international community that is spending all its money will not adore you. They will not support you. They will be as diplomatic as possible to prop you up until your term ends, but they will not support you. Going into the bank or the central bank and taking out the money, I think about $8 million or so, that was meant for the road fund that was deposited there, you know, matching fund that was deposited by the European community, for example. Nothing has been done about that. Look, the diplomatic community does not take kind to those things. And you saw the statement that they wrote. They demanded the government to give account of it. So those who are responsible for those things, action needs to be taken on them. So if the government can revamp itself and show credible faces, it will have a good, or what I can say, it will begin a new road towards 2023. If not, there is trouble for the Congress for Democratic Change in 2023.
Dr. Nyan, I can't thank you enough. I have taken a lot of your time. I hope we can get you sometime again to talk more on these issues that I think need to be discussed for us to chart a better course as a country. I want you to close now with this. Dual citizenship. I want you to close with that. And why you think Liberians should consider that or not consider that.
When I delivered the national oration in 2016, is one of the questions that I touched on, and I am already documented as asking the Liberian government to consider this whole issue of dual citizenship. Times have changed. In fact, Liberians have always had dual citizenship. Our founding fathers went back and forth with no issue of saying whether they were Americans or they were Liberians. But they definitely said they came as Africans to create the first Black independent country on the continent, Haiti being the first Black independent country in the world. And so it has always existed. As a matter of fact, our Constitution, and people confuse this most of the time, our Constitution still honors that. I beg any constitutional scholar to come and tell me, or tell this gathering, this public, that our Constitution does not support it. It says, if you ever gone to another country and then you give up your citizenship through that process of going to the embassy or to in Liberia itself and say, I am no longer a Liberian, there and then you are not a Liberian. It did not say if you get another citizenship, then you are not a Liberian. But I think this whole dual citizenship plank has been confused to a larger extent by those who are propagating it, trying to interpret the Constitution. And again, I will give a disclaimer. I am not a constitutional scholar. I am only looking at those clauses in the Constitution that guarantees dual citizenship already. But there have been some issues with respect to the amendments of the Constitution, which need to be fixed when it comes to children that, Liberians born outside of Liberia. And that is where I brought in that analogy of my kids. I am from River G. I have roots in Nimba, in Bong, and everywhere. And my children are born, some are born in the United States or elsewhere. And these kids, every time they talk about they want River G t-shirts, they were like 4 and 2 years old at that time. Kids that are at that age, already knowing where they come from. Are you going to deny them on paper that they are not? It begs us as Liberians to think very critically. To move on that, dual citizenship has a lot of benefits. If you look at China today, you see why the Chinese are the way they are today? Because most of their citizens went back and they transfer technology, they transfer resources. In fact, much of the money that was used to build China was put in there by diaspora Chinese. That investment. Look at Ghana today. The same thing is going on. So if you stop your own citizens who are natural from your country, but were displaced because of the same erratic uncivil war, and there are some selfish politicians, the same issue we were talking about earlier. They utilize their position not to be threatened, and they don't want other people to maintain their natural rights to their citizenship of Liberia. There are 2 old moms that I met. A friend of mine we said, let's just do something at one of the funerals. The old man, we told her, we're just talking, and we said, ma, in Liberia, because we're talking politics on the table, and we're talking about the same what was citizenship. We said, ma, in Liberia, they say, you're not Liberia anymore. You're not from Liberia anymore. But the old moms, they come, some of our friends who have the, papers and things they give them, and they got good immunity, they got good health care and all of that, and that's how they are taken care of.
Right.
And the old man said, oh, so I'm not Liberia anymore. That kind of fear. So you can see what people are feeling. It's not a bad thing. We only need regulations to be put in place so that, those who have, mind you talk about dual citizenship, there are people who have triple citizenships. People in Australia, can become American citizens, and they are also Liberians. That's 3. You know, we are talking about dual citizenship, but that's triple. And so we shouldn't restrict our citizens. It will benefit us. And I don't want, you know, there's a whole session, a whole forum that is needed to discuss this thing. But in summary,
exactly.
Yeah, in summary, we should not restrict our citizens.
Dr. Nyan, thank you so very much. We appreciate you honoring our invitation. We will not hesitate to get back to you as the political process draws near. I know NDC is in the mix. I'm not sure you are there just to be a bystander or a spectator in the political process. You want to be involved. And so we will get back to you. Thank you for coming, sir.
Thank you very much. And I appreciate the invitation. Being very cautious not to divulge a lot on the NDC, but we are in the mix. Thank you.
All right. All right. Thank you so very much. Well, folks, there you have it. This is how we'll come to the end. We will draw down the curtains here. I brought you another edition of Focus on Liberia here. As always, we don't close until we give you the sun. We are all Liberians. Bye-bye.
We are Liberians.